Welcome to the Palm Harvest Podcast. We are a community in Costa Mesa, California. To know more about us, visit our website, palmharvest.com. To follow along with today's message, download the Palm Harvest app and click on Sermon Notes. Thank you for listening.
Last week, as some of you know, my 85-year-old dad died. My dad breathed his last breath. And even though my dad lived 85 years on this planet, full disclosure, I wasn't completely prepared for his passing. And so my dad's death has left a bit of a mark on me. My heart and my mind has been flooded with emotions and memories of my time with my dad here on this earth. And if as I've been trying to work through this life experience, if you yourself have ever had a loved one or a family member die, you can likely relate that your mind is just overwhelmed with all kinds of, just memories. Well, years ago, my parents asked me to serve as the trustee for their financial estate. And so since my dad's death, I've been, kind of working through various documents. My mom and I have gotten together to look through my dad's personal belongings. And among his sort of life treasures, one of the things is, as we've been preparing for his burial, one of the things that we uncovered was his 40-year-old pocket Bible, his ministry pocket Bible. For 40 years, my mom and dad worked as co-laborers in pastoral ministry. And it was this little Bible that my dad carried with him when he would visit people in their homes and visit them at the hospital and do counseling. And it's probably safe for me to say that my dad even had this with him when he would be down at the local coffee house and some of the farm communities that he served, as he was, interacting with the farmers and just catching up on the local town gossip. When I opened it up, I noticed two things. In the back cover of this Bible, my dad had written kind of hand-scratched one Bible verse, and then the next day I opened this up and I looked closer. I realized that within the inside of this Bible, where this little pocket Bible where this bookmark was, my dad had ink scratched a couple of Bible verses that when I looked at those two verses in combination with the other verse that he had handwritten in the back cover of this little pocket Bible, it became very clear to me how these three Bible verses really characterized my dad's life. And I guess for me, it really reinforces the big idea of our conversation today. And that is that God uses the Bible to guide us. God uses the Bible to guide us. These three verses that my dad highlighted, let me just read 2 Timothy 4, 7 and 8. I have fought a good fight. I have finished my course. I have kept the faith. Henceforth there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, shall give me at that day. And not to me only, but unto all them also that love his appearing. For those of you who are familiar with this Bible passage and these two Bible verses, you know that they were written by one of the early church leaders, a guy by the name of the Apostle Paul, who was really an early Christian during the days of Jesus. And if you know Paul's story, you know that Paul didn't really have a very good start in his relationship with Jesus. In fact, he kind of had a rough start. Paul had a little bit of baggage in his life. And that's really good news for you and for me, because who of us don't have a little bit of baggage in our life? And yet still, God chose to work through him and work in him. When I think about my dad's life, if there's one thing that would, I think, really describe him, was he loved to work. My dad had an incredible work ethic. And, he came from the builder generation, and in many of the churches that he served, he was always building something. There was some kind of building project. Because if you know my mom and dad, you know how they love education. They love to, invest in both teachers and students. And so that they were always putting their time and energy to try to share the love of Jesus within that educational arena. But when you look at my dad's life, it's really easy to understand why maybe he had such a good, strong work ethic, is because my dad grew up on a South Dakota farm. And in fact, he was born on a South Dakota farm, not in some nice hospital like today. My dad was the oldest of 9 siblings. There were 5 boys and 4 girls. So my dad had 4 brothers and 4 sisters. And as the oldest, my dad was often looked to, understandably, for leadership. After graduating from college with a degree in biochemistry, my dad served for a season with the United States Army. He was, along with my mom, they were married at this time. He was stationed at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, where my dad served as a drill sergeant, where he trained men to go into battle, again, just illustrating his leadership capacity. Well, following his honorable discharge, and then as a result of a prison ministry that he had been involved with, my dad felt the call of God's life to serve him in full-time pastoral ministry. And so my dad left the Army. He went back to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, kind of his hometown area, where he enrolled, if you will, in seminary. And so my mom worked full-time to put my dad through school. Well, after graduating from seminary, my parents, they started their 40-year ministry tour, and they put into practice this other Bible verse that my dad referenced in the back of his Bible. 1 Corinthians 9:19. For though I be free from all men, yet have I made myself servant unto all, that I might gain the more. Paul is saying to his readers what sort of my dad is saying, even in his ink mark of this. He's saying, listen, even though I don't work for anyone, even though I'm a free man, I make myself a slave, I make myself a servant. I'm going to do whatever I can to try to share the love of Jesus and the message of Jesus with the people in my circles. Serve people. Really, that's what my parents distinguishes their 40-year ministry. They served people. They washed people's feet. They would share with anyone the good news of God's love, the message that God loves you and that He is for you. And friends, that He is with you. So for 5 years, my mom and dad started out of a church called Strasburg Baptist Church out of Marion, Kansas. For 5 years they served there. And then from there, they went to Lorain, Kansas, where they served at First Baptist Church of Lorain for 7 years. And then from there, moved to Apple Valley, Minnesota, to Apple Valley Baptist Church, where they served for 8 years. And it was in Apple Valley that my dad led the church through like 2 building programs again to create educational space for the community. After that, they moved to Tacoma, Washington, where for 10 years they served at Olympic View Baptist Church. And it was during that season of my dad's and my mom's ministry that my dad introduced to me. By this time I was in college, and he introduced to me what ministry was like as a volunteer police chaplain. A lot of you know, for the last 26 years, I've been a police chaplain, a volunteer police chaplain here in Costa Mesa. And I learned that. I got my start really by watching my dad. He would have the radio by his bedside, and he would listen to the kind of the chatter, and he would just, when there was a notice, back then you would self-deploy, and he would go out and he would show up to try to add comfort and love, many times with this little pocket Bible. Well, after retiring, my folks, they weren't done yet. So they did a stint. They would do this interim pastoral work where they would go and provide leadership again for these churches in transition. After their pastor left, my mom and dad would come in and they would provide sort of this bridge leadership to help churches get back on the right path and moving forward. My folks did a stint in Alpena, Michigan at the Word of Life Baptist Church, and then at Dallas, Oregon at Salt Creek Baptist, and then in Missoula, Montana at Bethel Baptist, and then they kind of came full circle, and they ended their ministry tour, their 40-year tour back in Lorain, Kansas, where they helped the church celebrate 125 years of existence. And my folks would lead these tours to Branson, all in this effort to try to just help people experience the love of Jesus in community, and with a spirit of fun and service. You know, my dad wasn't always home. And sadly, you know, I think too often, and my dad made his work ministry maybe a higher priority than his family ministry, a higher priority than us as kids. You know, and I share that with you not to try to put a stain on my dad's legacy, but to recognize this tension that every parent feels, that every pastor feels really in ministry, is how do I serve the people, and yet how do I not neglect my own family? You know, my dad's taught me a lot about life. There were many times, one of the things about my dad is he loved to drive. My dad was a phenomenal driver, and I got some great car stories, but many times when my dad would say, "Hey Mike, let's go for a drive," and we would jump in the car and we would go out, and he would just sort of unpack for me the world. We would talk, and he would tell me what was on his mind, and it was always a meaningful time. You know, growing up, one of the things that I spent a lot of time, particularly as a child, was my dad and I we used to go in the backyard, so to speak, and we would play baseball a lot. My dad loved the game of baseball, and if you know anything about the game of baseball, it's basically a game of failure. Really. I mean, if you can, as a hitter, for example, if you can hit the ball once out of every 3 times, for a batting average of 333%, you can make it into the Hall of Fame. Or in the game of baseball, if you can go hitless the entire game, you can go 0 for 4, but you can come up in the bottom of the game, the bottom of the 9th or 10th if you go into extra innings, and you can hit a blooper over the first baseman's head, and you can win the game and become a hero. And so as the game of baseball really taught me a lot about leadership. It's a game that teaches you persistence and discipline. It's a game that teaches you how to win and how to lose. You know, in the words of my youngest brother, Monty, who is a phenomenal baseball player, I mean, he's got a cannon for an arm. Monty says, you know, the mantra or the message that my dad would teach us, he says, is that when you lose, you say little. And when you win, you say even less. was playing softball. I was in a men's softball league because, like my dad, I love baseball too. And on this particular night, I can remember we were short a player, and in this league that I played, they allowed you to have subs. Well, my dad showed up to the game. He was still, in his, pastoral garb, so to speak. He was wearing a pair of dress slacks, and he had his patented leather hush puppy loafers that he always loved to wear. And we said, Dad, we need a player. And now realize I'd never really seen my dad play probably in 10 years. I knew he could throw the ball because we would play catch. In fact, I have his glove right here. Let me grab it. This glove is like 60 years old, and I used to give him grief because all it is like this piece of leather on this little old glove. It's crazy. I don't know how you would catch it. It would hurt my hand so much. But anyways, my dad shows up to this game. We said, Dad, we need a player. You got to help us. And so my dad reluctantly decides to play, and so he's at the bottom of the order. He's really not doesn't really want to do much. But the time eventually comes where my dad's got to swing the bat, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is going to be good. So he gets up to the plate, dress slacks, hush puppies. He's taking off his dress shirt, so he's wearing his J.C. Penney's, white T-shirt, short T-shirt that all the guys wore back in the 50s. You know the look. Gets up to the plate. Pitch comes. First pitch. He takes a swing and immediately sends it on a rope. It's a shot over the left field fence, aka Kirk Gibson for those of you Dodgers fans. Now my dad wasn't doing the fist pump, but he could have as he made rounded the bases, home run. I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? My dad came up to the plate 2 more times after that. Anybody want to guess what he did? Same behavior, same result. One swing, home run over the left field fence on a shot. My dad came in. I'm like, Dad, dude, you got to play. That was the last time I think I saw my dad play one more time after that. The guy could play. The guy had skills. The guy loved baseball. But it wasn't his calling. His calling was to love people. His calling was to pour his life and to serve people so that people might experience the love of Jesus and the recalibration, if you will, of Jesus in their life. Well, after retiring after their 40-year ministry gig, my dad began to sort of, I think, recalibrate sort of the priorities of his life. And that happens to a lot of us, does it not? I mean, who of us can honestly say that we haven't made a mistake in our life? And as my dad got older, family became, maybe because of time and whatever, but it just became more important to him. And I share all of this with you to set up really the context for my final story. The day before my dad died, my mom called me. By this time, my dad was, the last couple of years, he's been in a home, a villa, if you will, where he could get 24-hour care. It was more than my mom could kind of provide. My dad had a leg amputation a few years ago, and so it was hard for him to get around, and so regardless, he's now in this home. He's getting his 24-hour care, and my mom calls me. She says, Michael, I just got a call from the villa. Your dad's not doing very well. She said, you wanna meet me? And they told us we could come in and see him. Everything's on COVID lockdown right now. And she said, you want to come in? And you know what my response was? I said, Mom, I'm busy. It's the whole Cat Stevens, Cats in the Cradle song, right? Mom, I'm busy. I got an important business meeting tonight. It's the beginning of the year 2021. I got meetings I need to take care of. I said, you go. I just saw Dad. I'm okay. And as we hung up the phone, I thought, what am I thinking? What am I thinking? I leave my office all the time. I leave my home all the time to go visit people, just like my dad with his little pocket ministry Bible, to be with people in time of crisis. What am I thinking? So I called her up and I said, Mom, I'll meet you there. I sent out a quick text to all my board members and the people I was going to meet with. I said, I got to cancel tonight's meeting. We'll reschedule. I'll catch up with you. And so I jumped in the car and I drove up to the villa where my mom was there, and we went in to see my dad. As I was driving to the villa, I was thinking, if this is really it, if this is really the last time that I'm going to see my dad, what do I want to say to him? This might be the last time I have a chance to say something to him. What do I want to say to him? As we got into his room, he didn't look so bad. Full disclosure, I thought, I don't know what everybody's talking about. He was sleeping, and so we woke him up. And as I went around his bed, and some of you know the story, have heard me share the story already, I grabbed his hand as he was in bed, and I was surprised at how strong he was. I mean, I thought, wow, he doesn't feel weak to me at all. I don't know what people are so concerned about. But as I was holding his hand, my dad was kind of in and out, and then all of a sudden he started raising his hand toward the ceiling. And I'm looking, and I'm a pastor. I've been with people many times when they've died. That's just part of the gig, but I'd never seen that before. So, he's pointing kind of towards the ceiling, and I'm looking, and I'm thinking, is this like, Dad, what do you see? I say, Dad, what do you see? And in my head, I'm thinking, is he see this great white light? Is Jesus coming for him? What does he see? And he kind of shakes his head, and he goes, TV. And my mom says, he wants the TV turned off. And so we had a funny moment there where we laughed. And so I unplugged the TV. It's like my dad didn't want to be distracted by anything. He wanted to spend time with his family. It was like he knew something that we didn't know. I just began to say thank you. I didn't really know. He was kind of in and out, and I didn't really know of kind of consciousness. Sometimes he was open his eyes, sometimes he would close them. But I thought, I'm just gonna tell him. I don't know what's gonna stick, but I want to tell him thank you. I'm not gonna share the whole list of things that I shared, but the first thing I said was, Dad, thank you for introducing me to Jesus. I can remember very vividly, 5 years old in Marion, Kansas, Strasburg, Kansas. We're out in the middle of this country church. I can remember after a vacation Bible school, I went back and I sat on my dad's knee in the kitchen. And I said, Dad, I want Jesus in my heart. And together we asked Jesus to come and be my Savior, to forgive my sins. Because I knew that there was a heaven and hell, and I knew I didn't want to go to hell, even at 5 years old. And I think about the trajectory that decision that my dad led me in. The trajectory of how that's impacted people's lives. So I said, thank you, Dad. My dad was always encouraging my siblings and I to kind of spread our wings, to take risks. My dad used to always say, kids should chase butterflies. Now, when it was the summer and we were out of school, and if I wasn't playing baseball, he expected me to have a job or mow lawns or do newspaper route. But for the most part, my dad really encouraged us to kind of spread our wings. And I think it's because of him and my mom's example that all of my siblings have this entrepreneurial spirit. But I said, Dad, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to take risks and to be a leader in my own different world. And it was at that moment that something really shifted in the room. I looked at my dad. He was wide-eyed open, and he was all there, and then he said something. And I was pretty sure I heard what he said, but then I looked over at my mom, and I said, Mom, what did he say? And she said, Michael, I did the best that I could. I did the best that I could. I did the best that I could. Now Paul, in his final instruction to Timothy, this young pastor, as well as to you and to me, he's comparing his life to that of a race. And Paul is saying, I've run the race, I've given my best shot, I've stewarded this life baton the best that I can. But now he's saying, Timothy, it's your time to run, because the time has arrived, Timothy, for me to hang up my cleats, so to speak. He said, the time has come for me to graduate, and I kind of feel like maybe that was my dad's own little mantra as well. And so Paul is saying, I'm holding my head high, and I'm looking forward to that heavenly crown that awaits all of us, you and me, every person who puts their faith in Jesus. These are strong words that Paul writes. In fact, I think they're strong words that my dad himself sort of believed, so much so that he took time to etch them with a little ink scratch in his Bible. Friends, when you have Jesus in your life, death is not something that we have to fear. And when you have Jesus in your life, death is not something really that you even have to feel sad about. The good news about heaven is that it awaits all of us who put our faith in Jesus. And friends, that's good news. That's something that death is something that we can approach with joy and confidence. Now saying that, I'm not ready to go yet, right? I hope I still have a few more days on this planet. And so until that day arrives, even though I can look forward with joy and confidence and hope, knowing that because of my relationship with Jesus and his offer for me to be his child, until that day arrives, I need to run. You need to run. We need to give our best effort, steward well. We need to steward well what God has given us. Are you doing that? Am I? Who of us haven't made a mistake? And I guess the crux of my message is that life is a relay race. And God has entrusted you and me, each one of us, with one life. And there's a strong likelihood that we're going to fail. That's just part of the journey. That's just part of life's experience. But friends, the good news of the Bible, my dad's pocket ministry Bible, is that with God's help, we don't have to stay down. We can get back up. We can continue to swing the bat. We can continue to move forward. We can continue to get better. With God's word, we can look to it for instruction. With God's word, we can look to it for help. I fought a good fight. I have finished my course. I have kept the faith. Henceforth there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, shall give me at that day, and not to me only, but to all of them also that love his appearing. That my family on both sides, in particular on my mom's side, there's a song that everybody loves to sing, and the lyrics go like this. It says, what a day that will be when my Jesus I will see. I will look upon his face, the one who saved me by his grace. Then he'll take me by the hand and lead me through the promised land. What a day, glorious day that will be. And so until the Lord takes you home and takes you up, so to speak, you got to get to work. Who do you know who could benefit from the love of Jesus? Who do you know who could benefit from a phone call? Listen, if you haven't talked to your parents in a while, or if you haven't talked to your kids in a while, I just want to encourage you to reach out to them even today, as soon as this broadcast is over. Because we never know when that'll be the last time we get a chance to say thank you. So thank you for listening. Thank you for coming on this journey with me. God bless you. I'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Palm Harvest podcast. We would love to get to know you, so download the Palm Harvest app for free and fill out our connection card. Your continued support helps us spread hope around the world. You can also give in our app and find out more about our community.